Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 7:04 a.m. East Coast time. It is Saturday, October 12th. We're about, 31 hours until lock while I'm recording this. And today we're going to do the That One Dude video. If you're here for the first time, welcome. My name is Sal Vetri. I do cover daily fantasy sports in the MLB, NBA, WNBA, and yes, these NFL streets right here. The NFL Week 6 season is about to lock. All the content is pretty much out for this week outside of some things that still have to go up on Patreon, our Sunday show, our final show. If you have any interest in my exclusive content, lots of stuff already up there. My game-by-game notes for every single player that I have interest in, and really just notes on every single player that is in play this weekend. About a 10-page document. Friday leverage and ownership showing up yesterday. There's so much over there. There's like 10 or 12 different things that I do every single week. You can get access to that linked down below, as well as my daily fantasy course. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. But what we do here on this video is I find one player that's not generating as much buzz, and people over the last 24 hours are trying to tell me that this player is generating buzz. Maybe a little bit more now that I'm talking about him via Twitter and 100 people that see it. But not generating that much buzz, and usually I have a list of like 2, 3, maybe 4 players. This week it's over 5 in terms of like guys that I wanted to put into this video, but can't get them all in there. If you are a patron, you know on the leverage show, you'll probably know a lot of those plays that I think are just way too low owned in the 12% range of ownership, in the single digits at wide receiver. So many guys at wide receiver that are under owned this week. So many guys that are wrongfully over-owned, in my opinion. You can get access to that. The Friday leverage and ownership show is already up. You can click the link in the description to get the Patreon. But what I want to do here is talk about one player. Just one player. This player is on a team this week that, in my opinion, based on the Vegas total, it's one of the more, not head-scratching, but intriguing Vegas lines of the week. They're coming back home. They're going to be a favorite against a team that has been red hot, a team that does not have their starting quarterback at the helm, but it has been not a problem at all. Wide receiver for that team that they're facing this week, who has been absolutely dominant, beating everybody, and seems to be in an even better spot this weekend now that the Jacksonville Jaguars star cornerback Jalen Ramsey is likely to miss again. You have Sean Payton scheming plays open for Teddy Bridgewater, just left and right. They're winning games. Now they come on the road in what is potentially a trap spot for maybe both teams. Both teams seem to be fine, performing well so far this season with backup quarterbacks at the helm. The player that I think is going to be that one dude, and well, yes, he is, since I'm making this video this week, and I tweeted about him yesterday. Tweet got a bunch of buzz. Lots of people responding to it, retweeting, liking it. Appreciate all of you guys doing that. You follow me over there at SalVetriDFS. But Dede Westbrook. Dede Westbrook is that one dude for this week. Now, I know what you're saying. Sal, you tweeted about this. His ownership's going to come up. Well, let me tell you one thing. Since I tweeted about this, his ownership went from 5% owned to 3% owned across the industry from what I'm seeing on a couple different sites. Look, for the people that want to say I have influence over the ownership, no, I don't. No, I do not. The 3,000 of you, or the 2,500 of you that watch this video before lock, and then there's going to be like 1,300 of you for some reason that watch it after lock, that is not moving the needle on anything. Even if all of you were to play him, that is not moving the needle on anything. The 2,000 and change Twitter followers that I have, half of which don't care about the tweets that I post, and the ones that liked it, the 100 of you, if all of you played Dede Westbrook this weekend, that is not going to change a damn thing in terms of ownership. Not at all. And that's if all of you did. 100 people in a 200,000 person field, no, it's not moving the needle. So the influence that I have over the market, it's non-existent. So people trying to say that he's generating buzz, the buzz is a little bit too late. And there's a big reason why he's not getting as much ownership as he should. There's a couple of reasons, really. But let me go through the benefits. Actually, no, let's stay there. Robert Woods is the same exact price as him, and people are wrongfully playing Robert Woods this week. I agree that Robert Woods is a little bit more expensive than him. Same price as Michael Gallup, which is pulling ownership off of Michael Gallup, but getting a lot of ownership in that range is Robert Woods at 5,600. And I agree that Robert Woods is probably underpriced by $400 or $500, but his matchup is brutal, and he's just pulling ownership off of these other wide receivers down in that range. There's a lot of cheap running backs this week that are in play, so when people are looking for flex options, oh, look, Todd Gurley's doubtful. Oh, David Johnson might not play. Oh, we still have Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson and Adrian Peterson down here at a similar but cheaper price point. It's pulling all the ownership off of the low 5K, high 4K wide receiver range. And for the most part, a lot of those wide receivers aren't great in that range, but Dede Westbrook is sort of the diamond in the rough. He's way too cheap, and he gets a matchup this week that, look, I posted this tweet on Twitter. Again, it got some buzz, but I don't understand why people aren't talking about this matchup more. We've had some players in this position this year just get low ownership. And once again, it seems like it's going to happen this week. As I said, 5% ownership throughout the week is dropping already on Dede Westbrook right now as more and more cheap running back options like Malcolm Brown open up throughout the industry, and people start to gravitate there instead of stay at a really beneficial spot. So Dede Westbrook's matchup is going to be against P.J. Williams in the slot this week. P.J. Williams, somebody tried to tell me, is not the primary slot receiver for this, or slot cornerback for this team. Have you looked at the numbers? Pro Football Focus, slot wide receiver usage, whatever it might be, matchups columns. He is in the slot over 95% of the time, closer to 98% of the time is PJ Williams since last year. And this is really when it started, was last year, the demise of PJ Williams, if there ever was a peak. He has just been absolutely awful. He's always been a good tackling cornerback, but maybe that's a little bit inflated because he's letting the wide receivers catch the ball. So this is exactly what you see from PJ Williams so far this year in a week-by-week matchup against the other team's slot wide receiver. You have week 1, Kenny Stills, who was recently acquired in week 1, did not have a full week of practice with the Texans. He caught 3 balls for 37 yards and a touchdown. Pretty good week, just under 13 fantasy points. Cooper Kupp, week 2, has been dominating every slot cornerback, but 5 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, that's pretty good for 25 fantasy points. Lockett, week 3, a guy who probably profiles out the most like Dede Westbrook in terms of size and speed, and just the make of their bodies for this matchup. He had 11 catches, 154 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, that's over 30 fantasy points. Week 4, Randall Cobb, a veteran on the decline of his career, but still has some talent. 3 catches, 41 yards. That was the worst week for a slot wide receiver. And we never expect much from Randall Cobb anyways. So 7 fantasy points for a guy like Randall Cobb that week was probably a little bit above average for his skill set. And then last week, Chris Godwin goes nuclear. 7 catches, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just in the Millie Maker winning lineup for the second straight week. Chris Godwin, the god himself. So what does that equal up to? Well, that equals up to over 22 fantasy points per game against PJ Williams this year in the slot. Okay, now all of those catches for every single one of those players might have not been in the slot. Cooper Kupp primarily will live in the slot. Kenny Stills primarily lived in the slot. Same exact thing can be said for Randall Cobb. Same exact thing, for the most part, can be said for Tyler Lockett, who's there over 2/3 of the time, and then Chris Godwin over there a ton. So all those catches were not in the slot. Some were not against PJ Williams, but the point being is that the end result for these players who primarily work out of the slot, who some of them 66, 2/3 to 80% of the time will work out of the slot, if not more, was very good. Over 22 fantasy points on average. And now you get Dede Westbrook, who's just coming off of back-to-back games where his target share has increased. He just saw 11 targets in the last game. And the guy who's on his team getting all the hype is DJ Shark, for good reason. DJ Shark has been fantastic. But this week, DJ Shark draws a matchup with Marshawn Lattimore. And people are going to reach out to me and say, Sal, Marshawn Lattimore has been terrible this year. No, he hasn't. He had one bad game week 1, and it was a very bad game. Look, Marshawn Lattimore has had 3 shadow matchups in the first 5 weeks. Week 1, DeAndre Hopkins, who a player, wide receiver that we all know I think is the best wide receiver in the league, has size and speed, absolutely torched him week 1. Primetime DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best primetime players in the entire league. Then he doesn't shadow week 2 and week 3. He shadows week 4 and he shuts down Amari Cooper, who has not been shut down by any other cornerback this year. Week 5, he absolutely donuts Mike Evans, who catches 0 balls on 3 targets his way and just absolutely shuts him down. So what you get from Marshawn Lattimore this year is 4 straight solid games. 4 straight solid games and 1 really bad game. Now, whenever you're dealing with sample or size data of 5 games and 1 game, week 1, is so bad in terms of over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns, it's going to significantly skew your entire season's worth of data and your entire season performance. People are going to look at Marshawn Lattimore and say, he's below average. He's a below average cornerback. No, he's had 4 average to a well above average games and 1 really bad game. So it's skewing his whole sample size down, making him look like a bad quarterback when for the most part he's good. Now, why do I mention all this Marshawn Lattimore talk if he's not going to be the guy on Dede Westbrook, right? That's going to be PJ Williams. Well, if Marshawn Lattimore for this game does indeed shadow DJ Shark, which if I had to project it right now, I'm not sure what the industry is saying. I'm not sure what Pro Football Focus Shadow Matrix is saying, but I would personally say that he's going to be shadowing him. Look, all else that you have on this team is Chris Conley. That's not really scaring anybody. Marshawn Lattimore going up against DJ Shark makes the most sense. Now, DJ Shark, I think this is a nice matchup for DJ Shark himself. You talk about the other wide receivers so far. Amari Cooper has speed but not size. Marshawn Lattimore shuts him down. Mike Evans has size but not speed. Marshawn Lattimore shuts him down. Week 1, DeAndre Hopkins has speed and size. Now, that's not to say that DJ Shark is DeAndre Hopkins, but I do think that combination has given Marshawn Lattimore troubles in the past, and we've really seen that. So this is a spot that I do think that it's a somewhat beneficial matchup for Shark, but at the same time, Lattimore is playing a lot better than the public is thinking, a lot better than the numbers are thinking. When you just factor out a 1 game, if you take away week 1, which obviously you can't, but you take that away, he's been playing as one of the best cornerbacks in the league. But people are going to view him as one of the worst cornerbacks in the league because he gave up so much production in terms of double-digit catches, week 1, multiple touchdowns. So what I'm saying here is that there's a really good chance that Marshawn Lattimore factors out DJ Shark to a greater extent than we've seen in the past couple of weeks for Gardner Minshew. That's not the only issue here, though. This week, the worst offensive line or the best defensive line advantage against an offensive line is this Saints defensive line against Jacksonville. That's how it grades out. There's injuries to the Jacksonville offensive line, and for the most part, they have not been great So what does that mean? Well, that hurts Leonard Fournette in the backfield. Now, sure, Leonard Fournette is too cheap. He's probably going to see over 20 touches this game. He's going to have a receiving game role that is on average around 7 fantasy points per game, 6.7 per game to be exact. But once again, if this defensive line can get there in terms of pressure on Minshew, well, where's your first read? Probably to Leonard Fournette, probably to your tight end. Oh, wait, James O'Shaughnessy is done for the season, the guy who's averaged 4 targets per game and has been sort of a safety valve for Gardner Minshew when he is facing pressure this year. Yeah, he's gone. Jeff Swaim's going to take the place. Jeff Swaim is not somebody that has shown a rapport so far in about 50% snaps this season with Gardner Minshew. So that leaves Leonard Fournette, and then that leaves Dede Westbrook. And when you're telling me Dede Westbrook is one of the best players in the league at generating separation, and now he's facing one of the worst cornerbacks in the league in terms of coverage, I like that matchup a lot. So we cannot underestimate the matchup on the outside with Marshawn Lattimore taking away Shark here. We cannot underestimate the defensive line matchup against this offensive line. Like Leonard Fournette, I think he's a good play, but I'm shying away from him because this is a brutal spot for his offensive line. Now, for fantasy purposes, not shying 100% away because he does have a lot of volume that he's going to get in this game. But all of these things are just adding up to a recipe of how the heck is Dede Westbrook, a guy who saw double-digit targets last week, a guy who continues to see more targets and red zone targets as the season goes on. How is this guy 3% owned at the price tag that he's at? I get it. Everybody wants to go play the Malcolm Brown play. The Malcolm Brown who's going to average 2.5, 3 yards per carry against that defensive line of the 49ers. But maybe he'll fall in the end zone and get you 12 fantasy points, right? Look, I think Malcolm Brown is a fine play at that price point, especially in cash games. But in tournament plays or in tournament games, I think I prefer getting a little bit different, not playing the 40, 50% chalk that doesn't really have that much upside outside of red zone rushing. And I like a guy in Dede Westbrook who this week I would project for somewhere around 8.5 targets. And that's a median projection. That does not mean that he can't see double-digit targets. This is a fantastic matchup for Dede Westbrook. In weeks past, we have done up, down, average, right, in terms of our that one dude. There's so many players that I wanted to name for this. If you are part of Patreon, you know some of those other players right now. I'm not going to say them on here, but if you wanted to sign up for Patreon, you can. Link down below in the description. Check it out for sure. That one dude for this week, and I believe that's all the notes that I have on Dede. He's averaging over 7 targets per game, by the way, 7.4, but a lot of that is being skewed over the last 2 games, which is good because that shows positive regression in terms of he's getting more and more targets. It's not just DJ Shark. Sure, DJ Shark is getting the deeper throws down the field, and yes, his ceiling is relatively higher, but now you put a good cornerback on him, and you put the best matchup in the league potentially, one of the 2 best matchups in the league, right there with the Ravens in the slot without no Tavon Young this year have been terrible. 4 slot wide receivers, and Dede Westbrook grades out very, very, very well. New Orleans is surrendering 43 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. A lot of that because of the poor play in the slot. A lot of that because a little bit of DeAndre Hopkins from week 1. And again, I mentioned slightly James O'Shaughnessy being out, the tight end. He's on IR now. Jeff Swaim, Geoff Swaim, whatever his name is, he's going to be coming in place of that. And I think he takes on a similar role, but there's a clear connection with Gardner Minshew and James O'Shaughnessy. Look, 4 targets per game for a tight end like that in an offense that has wide receivers who are averaging over a couple wide receivers who are averaging over 7 targets per game. That's pretty good. And if you watched any of the tape and if you look at pressure statistics, he targets James O'Shaughnessy on almost all of his pressure snaps. So now your safety valve is gone. Who's next up? Maybe the slot wide receiver that's getting separation. That man's name is that one dude, Dede Westbrook. So that's where I'm at right now. I think the only positive and clear positive matchup on this team is going to be Dede and maybe Chris Conley to an extent. But I'd rather go to Dede Westbrook for that one dude this week. He's too cheap. I'm going to get to him. And for people that think that I have the clout to bump up the ownership projections on players, not yet. Maybe one day. But there's no shot that that's actually happening when by the time this locks, 2,000 of you are going to watch this and play. Half of you are only going to play them in your cash game lineups, if that. So appreciate you tuning in. That one dude this week is Dede Westbrook for week 6. Probably just jinxed it all, so expect 3 catches for 25 yards and no touchdowns here. No, I'm just kidding, but thank you for tuning in. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. You can follow me on Instagram at SalVetri, like the Facebook page, SalVetri. That's all the socials, right? Make sure to hit the subscribe button before you leave. We just crossed 12,000 subscribers, and we also crossed 200 patrons, which was a goal that I set of mine a while back. Never really thought I would hit it, but it was a bold goal, so now we just made a new goal of 300. I'll be giving away a lifetime subscription to Patreon starting on Monday. So if you join today on our first look video, you will be a part of that raffle, a part of the first 202 people we have now. But whoever joins will be a part of the raffle. It's going to randomly generate one of the patrons' names, and you get a lifetime subscription to all of my content as long as Patreon survives, right? So as long as I have a Patreon, which for the foreseeable future is going to be there, you will have a lifetime subscription. We will get that worked out. So make sure to check that out. If you've watched all the way to this point and you're still here, you can check that out. And I'll also let you know that patrons get $100 off my daily fantasy sports course for the NFL, and there'll be an NBA one as well come January. So you can take advantage of that as well. It actually works out smarter to become a patron for like $20 a month and then save $100 instead of just buying the course. But if you're somebody who watched to the end, now you know a little bit of a tidbit there. But yeah, I'll be live later today. If you're watching this on Saturday on the Awesemo stream, I will be live Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for an hour, 11 a.m. Saturday as well for an hour with Awesemo on the Awesemo stream with Chris Randone. So appreciate you tuning in. This is That One Dude for the NFL Week 6 season of the 2019 season. So thank you. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.
Hey, hold up. 1 second. Check out this page. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a patron, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a patron. It will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetri DFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well? See ya.